Hello, welcome to our short tutorial on the UC Sketch tool. This is a prototype tool developed at Poznan University of Technology, which is intended to support analysts in, as we call it, sketching use cases. Okay, you may wonder, what does it mean to sketch a use case? If we look at the typical process of eliciting functional requirements in the form of use cases, it consists of two phases. In the first phase, we are trying to identify user-level use cases, starting from the problem definition, going through the context, and finally going deeper into business processes, looking for these user-level goals. As a result, we create a use case diagram which consists of actors and use cases and relationship between them. This part of analyst work is a very creative one. You have to understand the new environment, the rules that are working in this environment, and derive these user-level goals. In the next phase, we have to write the scenarios of use cases. Depending on the size of the system, it can take you long hours to write all the scenarios. That's why frequently you're not able to write them together with the customer. Moreover, because of the similarities between use cases, this is quite a repeatable task. You're ending up doing the same thing all over again. In the idea of sketching use cases, we are trying to use these similarities between use cases to help in your work. In our research, we are trying to investigate the structure of use cases in order to analyze the goals of use cases and the relationship between the goal and the structure of a use case. And this is how the idea works. So first of all, you're working on your use case diagram with your customer during the meeting. And once you have the names of use cases, you're trying to guess the main transaction. Transaction is a self-contained part of scenario which leads to obtaining some goal. So we have a catalog of 12 transaction types, and system also will try to suggest you the type of transaction in your use case based on the title, and it will suggest you some patterns you can use. If you agree for a pattern, it will generate you the whole scenario. And then you have to just customize the scenario to your needs. In order to express, store and interpret patterns, we have proposed an XML-based language which is called UCPTL. So technically our system can be enhanced, improved with new patterns all and over again. Okay, let's try to look how the system works in practice. This is the main page of our system. Here you can learn more about the UC Sketch tool. You can create an account here, and then you can log into the system. Let's try to log in. This is the main view of specifications. You will see the list of all specifications you've created. Let's try to add a new one. Let it be conference system. Okay, we are editing conference system specification right now, as you can see. We can add a new use case or modify specification description. Let's try to add a new use case. The first use case would be submit a paper. Once we create a use case, we can add a new one to add all use cases from the use case diagram, or go directly to editing the use case. You can also see the specification here. Okay, here is our use case. Now let's add other use cases from our diagram. Here is a complete list of our use cases. Let's see what we've got here. For each use case you can see its number or ID. We have a title, we have some actions like viewing, printing, generating HTML, editing and deleting. There is also a main transaction column, which we will not use right now. Okay, let's try to edit our submit a paper use case, or rather sketch it. Let's see what we've got here. This is the use case sketching editor. Here you see the use case you are sketching. And it is divided into two parts. On the left hand side you can see a use case editor. This is the main part of the screen. And here on the right hand side you can see some additional options and list of parameters. Okay, let's take a look. We have a number, we have use case title, and we have a hint. The system tries to guess the main transaction, the type of main transaction of your use case. So submitting a paper is probably about creating an object, a paper. Yes, I agree. So I choose create as a main transaction type. You can learn more about transaction here and look at our papers if you are interested in this topic. Okay, what next? We have to decide on the pattern of a use case. System suggests us two patterns for create transactions as a main transaction. This is simple create. Here you can see how often it was used. And we have also CRUD, more complicated one. For this use case I would like to use create a single transaction pattern. Okay, let's see. Okay, so this is the editor of a use case. It has two modes. In editing mode you can edit and you can see the names of parameters here. And you can also preview use cases. Okay, then all parameters are rendered to the values. Let's go back to editing use case. So each parameter here has a value here on the list. And right now we have to modify the sketch to our needs. So for instance, in the first step we have user chooses the option to add the object. First of all, I would like to see option to submit rather than option to add. What can I do? First of all, I can just edit it, just modify the description here. I can also use parameters to change the values. If I click the parameter, I can see some options. These are different forms of this noun, for instance. In English, it doesn't matter so much, okay? But in Polish, it's quite important because it's an inflectional language. So I have different forms of nouns. They are automatically obtained from web service, and if you have your own name, if you use not a common name, you have to provide different forms. Okay, let's try to change it to submit to option to submit. Okay, let's try to look at our use case. User chooses the option to submit the object. Okay, the object. The object as this parameter appears in many places, as you can see. So let's try to change it to paper. Okay, that's great. If we talk about parameters, there is also one important information. There are some optional parts of the pattern using the brackets. This part will render only if this parameter exists, so it's not empty. As you can see, criteria, it's empty. That's why it's not rendered. Let's try to add some criteria. Okay, system validates the paper in respect to correctness of the paper. Okay, it's a fully functional, simple editor of use cases, scenarios. So you can, for instance, add a new step, whatever you like. You can add extension, you can remove this step. You can also use parameters that were defined. For instance, I can add a new step, system congratulates our actor. Let's see. Great, it works. Okay, so this is basically what you need to know about sketching use cases. When you finish with a use case, you can save your work and go back to the specification. What you can see here, we have a main transaction for this use case. UC Sketch is not intended to be use case repository, so you can remove all the sketches after you use them. For instance, when you create a use case, you can print it, generate it to HTML and copy it into a word processor or whatever tool you are using. Then you can easily remove use cases from the system. You can also look at the higher level, so for each specification you can also generate some output. For instance, you can generate HTML for the whole specification and then copy paste it to whatever system you like. I would like to mention one other thing. After working a while with the system, it will ask you to fill a survey. As it is a scientific tool, we would really be pleased if you could spend a while and help us to improve the tool in the future by providing your answers to the questions. Okay, so this is the end of the tutorial. I hope you enjoy it and I wish you a very productive work with our tool and also very nice sketches of use cases in the future. See